Welcome back, everyone. I think so, as I mentioned before, we're going to move to water. On my book, it's page 44. And what we're going to do, I want to go through the water, and then we're going to do the VPP, so Mrs. Ellsworth can move on to other things. So if we could go, or could you put the water department up for us to see, please, and thank you. Again, might be a little different than yours, Rick. Mine's page 44.
That's 4.
In the budget section.
Yeah,
Oh,
in
sorry.
the budget section.
Okay.
So am I in the, what's this one? The revenue.
Revenue, that's this.
That's this one here. No, that's not the same as this one.
That's summary. Oops, here, sorry.
Okay, so actually I have page 45 we're going to actually start on. All right, I'll ask Mr. Charlebois just to briefly, what I'd like to do maybe, if it's okay with council, maybe we can go through the page at a time. And then I'll just say, do you have any questions or anything you'd like to bring up or discuss at the time, rather than go through every single item one at a time? Is council okay with that?
Yep.
All right, so for page 45, we're looking at the revenue first. Any questions regarding the revenue? And Mr. Charlebois, if there's anything you'd like to jump in, please do so.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. For example, on the revenue, so the 7.8 million on the total revenue, that's the number we had just seen in the presentation. Presentation's a high level summary of everything that you're going to see here now in detail.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Charlebois. So we'll look down lower for the expenses regarding the water treatment plant. Is there any questions regarding the expenses for the water treatment plant? Okay, seeing none, I'll go on to the next page, to the booster station, page 46. And again, I'll ask Mr. Charlebois if there's anything you'd like to add at any time, please jump in. If not, we'll go down to water administration. Any questions for Mr. Charlebois or Mr. Thompson regarding the water administration? Okay, we'll move on to the water department, water billing collection. And you too, Mrs. Pearson, if there's anything you'd like to add, please stop me. Water equipment. You have a list of the water equipment there. Petrolia distribution. Councillor Welsh.
We passed the page with the amount of how much was going to be spent on the distribution system, and I don't remember what page that was on. And I just wondered if there's anything specific, large that we're doing.
Page 47 for Councilor Welsh.
Okay, so on page 47, yeah. You were directing that through me to Mr. Thompson, is that
Yes,
correct?
Please.
47.
It was capital.
42. It's in my book.
Okay, Mr. Charlebois, well,
Yeah.
if he's looking, would you like to
Yeah.
speak to that?
Add something here. So for our
Here it
insurance,
is. Oh, I found it.
go ahead.
Yeah, water budget overview, 75, no, distribution system, 33K. I was wondering if there are specific projects. That's on page 41 of my book. Draft 2025 water budget overview.
Mr. Thompson or Mr. Charlebois, one of you like to speak to that, please? Page 41. Yours might be a bit different, right?
Here's a little bit. Under the capital, Mike,
Yeah, capital.
33,000 for distribution system.
We could, well, through your worship, we could pull up the spreadsheet from Aqua that has
Yeah,
the
actually it's at the
detail.
bottom, Annette. Can you please scoot down to just below the operating stuff and it shows the capital for 25? Have the details in there. Here we go. Distribution, so it's to the right.
Oh,
You should, or maybe it's,
hydrant and leak detection. Okay.
yeah, those are the items and the amounts are under one of those columns that's hidden.
Worship, yeah, it's pretty straightforward every year. Counselor Welsh is, that's generally the items that are in that. I mean, if we have any issues with valves or hydrant, flushing hydrants, we usually have problems with valves in front of the hydrant and hydrants leak and stuff like that. So that's the main chunk of that money. And then, leak detection too. We do a section of town per year for leak detection.
And then our regular distribution costs for regular budget that we're doing the page for.
Yeah, the biggest chunk of the money in our regular line item is for distribution mains, water main breaks and what have you. That's come down quite a bit over the years. I mean, obviously we had that issue at Buttermilk Creek and down in the flats 2 Christmases in a row. So fingers crossed that we won't have any issues this year, but it's been a pretty good year this year as far as water main breaks. I think we've had 3, the most recent behind the grocery store on Robert Street. And that happened when they were flushing hydrants. Sometimes that happens. It's just kind of an issue that comes up once in a while. So that's the biggest chunk out of distribution is distribution mains.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. You're okay with that, Councillor Wells? All right, so that, I think for jumping ahead, so are we moving on now to the actual water capital? Are you ready for that one? That's on page 48. Any discussion regarding that water capital? While you're looking, just for information, and maybe Mr. Charlebois or Mr. Thompson can answer this question. The amount of actual leakage and water loss from our system, is it still around that 15%?
Through your worship, no, I think last couple of years it's been down to 8, between 8 and 10, hasn't it, Rick? I believe.
That's great news.
Back in 14, 15, it was up north of 12%, but I don't think it ever got to 15%. But yeah, I think that's below average, Rick. I believe. I think we've.
Yeah, good. 10%'s good. And what this is all these pipes that are in the ground, even though we try not to have them leak after they're been there 50, 75 years, they will leak a bit. And that's normal for a water system. We did have issues when I first got here. Actually, I think it was close to 18, 20% first got here.
Mr. Thompson, go
A
ahead.
lot of that loss too is through water main breaks.
Yeah.
You mean,
Yeah,
so
right.
you mean in particular Buttermilk Creek and
Yeah.
down the flats. It
Okay.
There's a lot of pressure on that, not necessarily in town when we're, one arises through hydrant flushing, but the water that's flushed through the hydrants or any kind of training through the fire department or anything like that is in that calculation as well. So
Yeah. And as we redo roads, we check the water pipes, underground pipes, see how they're doing and replace them as needed. Yeah.
and then chase leaks through leak detection as well. So
Oh, that's great news. Thank you for that. I can remember when it was 17% and higher, so that's good. Councillor Hyatt.
This is a question, might cross departments, but again, the Parks and Rec budget, we have utility expense for the splash pad. Does that become a revenue for the water budget? So
Yes.
that's included in the, that's included in the revenue section
Yeah.
already?
Just, and correct me if I'm wrong, all our facilities are basically that use the water are charged for that, like the arena, the water. So yes, that gives us a true cost.
Yeah. And also an incentive to become better at it, right? Use less water.
All right, thank you. Anything else on the water capital? If not, we'll move on then. Do you want to deal with the,
The motion, right?
yeah, we can deal with the water episode regarding the $15 and the distribution. We can deal with that motion or bring that forward again at this time, if that's okay with council. So that, I'll just go back to that. That was, yeah, approving the water rates. There was the two, or no, yeah, the council, Town of Petrolia approve as presented the 2025 water rates.
And for
So-
a refresher, that had been moved by Counselor Welsh and seconded by Counselor O'Hara.
Yeah, I think they withdrew that, but you want to go back on with
Oh,
that?
we just said we would.
Just
postpone
deferred
it
it?
till
They
now.
agreed to move. it
Okay,
forward. Yeah.
all right. So we do have that motion. I'll ask the clerk just to read that one more time so we're clear before we vote.
And that is for the Council of the Town of Petrolia to approve as presented the 2025 water rates.
And I'll open it up for any questions from council. I have one too. But all, council, do you have anything you'd like to bring up at this time? Councillor Hyde.
I guess my first question is, so we're increasing the fixed charges by roughly 46%. And on
Yeah, it
top of
was-
that, we're adding a 2.5% increase to the variable rate. So, you know, as a result, it would be over a double-digit increase to like the specific home. Typically, when I look at my bill, it's a 13.9% increase in general, and I use a lot of water. Someone who uses less water than myself would see roughly, you know, say a 17% increase in their water costs.
Except that's just for the base rate. So that's not going to be built on how much water you use. Well, I know what you're saying.
In
but-
the aspect,
Yeah.
the aggregate does depend, the aggregate percentage of increase does depend on what.
And it was already going to go up 3%, but that would still just take it over $11, I think. So we're going from, instead of that $11, we're recommending going to the $15.
So I guess from my perspective, I'm just wondering if now is the right time to be doing such a large increase.
Okay,
in
no,
terms
good point. Councillor Wells.
of costs.
Has the amount of the fixed water changed at all in reflection of the $15? So the fixed amount was a certain amount. Is that increased or decreased?
I think Rick might know. I'm not sure what's in past years, what's happened with the fixed.
Oh, yes, through your worship, just whatever council approved, if they've recommended 2% increase, it went to the variable part and the fixed part.
I'm
Um,
talking about the actual amount of water use. There's a certain amount up to a threshold in that $15 amount. Has that changed? There is amount, isn't there? In the-
So if you look in,
Threshold.
if you look in the fee
Oh,
schedule,
the minimum usage
Yeah,
consumption?
no, Jay, that's
Yeah,
what I'm
yeah.
looking for, yes.
and if you look in the fee schedule, it hasn't changed. So the
Right,
minimum
right.
cubic meters of water
Yeah.
per usage has not changed.
Can I just add?
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Calabro.
Yeah, actually, we've been looking at increasing the water fixed portion and also actually introducing a sewer fixed portion. As council knows, we don't have a fixed sewer portion for, I'd say, at least the last 6-8 years. And then when this came up, this actually will relieve a lot of financial pressure off of our water system. We have to find that 4 million for the intake. We've already got, as council's seen, about 2 million in the water reserve, but this will help us get there. And it switched when I implemented that proposed change to our water operating cost for next year. It went from taking money away from our water reserve to putting some money in.
Yeah, this really would have an impact too with people if they're out of the country or going south, not using any water. There's that base rate that they would pay. And that would be the $15 instead of the 11. But I think the idea was that set amount years ago was low. And all we were doing, in my opinion, was increasing it whatever our percentage for the municipal portion went up. But that should have probably been higher probably years ago. But that's just my opinion. But it's open for council for suggestions. Deputy Mayor Field.
Do we have any fixed rates from any of the other municipalities around us? Do you have any of those figures?
Not on me now, but maybe during lunch I can go grab that.
I think we received that when we had the public meeting for it, the one individual that came only mentioned, I think, Sarnia's.
Yeah.
And wondered why if they're based, and again, if people went away, we still got to have some money to help pay for the system, whether they use the water or not. And I think he compared it to the city of Sarnia. And I thought, and correct me if I'm wrong, he said it was $40 for their
Yeah.
rate.
I
So
think it's
we
at
just
least 40.
thought 15 was certainly, 15 is pretty reasonable to maintain a system for someone that's not here using any water. But because we still have to pay the cost to keep the system going. Councillor Clark.
Just understanding that other municipalities have a higher fixed rate, do they also have a higher volume allowance in that fixed rate?
I think they're all over the map, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Charlebois. Some do have, I think, a higher, they have a higher base rate, but they may have a lower rate on the water usage. So you're right, it's a tough one to compare. You got to look at all those.
But they're all different.
Can I just ask to Mr. Charlebois before we go any further, when I look on mine, it's schedule, I don't see a page number. It's schedule J1.
If you wish, your worship, as you're doing that discussion, I can, through my iPad, Rick, share with you some of those rates, if that will help you at all.
Oh, yeah, why don't we do that? Can you do that? You've got that now?
I just gotta,
Maybe while you're doing that, just a quick question on that one for Mr. Charlebois. If you see here, we have out of boundary, Uzlowski and Discovery Line for water. It was $15.63 instead of just the $15.
Yeah.
And the other was Meadowview and Lambtonian was even 15. My question is, if they're out of boundary, out of the municipality, would we not keep those both the same? Should they be like one is the 2548, that's, and then for but Meadowview, are they getting a special deal with that $15? Because they are out of the boundary of Petrolia as well. Would that not be the same?
Yeah, actually, we can definitely look at that and make them the same.
Okay, I just think when it's out of the municipality, they should be paying the full cost and certainly not to necessarily get the same deal as the residents of the town of Petrolia, who are paying for capital and everything else. Just something to look at, Mr. Charlebois, please. Council understand what I'm
and would
talking
you, with
about?
your worship, we can add that into a motion for direction before that is approved.
Yeah, that'd be
Okay,
good.
Councillor Welsh.
And we can't necessarily, I suppose, base our base rate and our water rates on what someone else does, because we have different needs with respect to our, what we require for our water treatment plant. Luckily, ours is in really good shape, except for the new intake that's required. And again, the same goes for the wastewater treatment. We have a exceptionally brand new wastewater treatment plant, and the city of Sarnia, I think, probably has a lot of upgrades to do there. So our fee structures are going to be considerably different.
Yeah, oh, we're still paying a debenture though, till what, 2037 on that. I guess my concern is we've got an out of boundary and we charge one rate, and then we have another one that's out of boundary, but we charge a different rate. And I don't think there should be a difference. I think they should be charged the same, being out of the corporation of the town of Petrolia. But again, let's go back to where we were with what you've got there.
Yeah, let's see if I can.
I guess the comment, when I think we discussed this when we had the asset management report, we talked about going to the fixed costs. And I guess my general understanding was that if the fixed costs would go up, the variable costs would go down. And that's not what's presented here, understandably, or based on the financials. But I just think it's hard to say 46% increase on fixed and then also increase variable. So I guess some of the things are like there's a line item for like laws, water usage for 10K. Like, what's the history on laws, water usage? Have we had to use that in recent history, or is that?
Well, I think at one time, I think at one time we were higher than laws. I'm not sure where we are now, but at one time years ago, we were higher on our water rates than laws.
Yeah, not specific.
But I don't know where they're at now. Mr. Thompson, would you like to speak to that, please?
So for that light, through your worship, through to Chad, for that light, if in the past, in 15, 16, 17, we had frazzled ice out on the intake. So a couple years, we spent $20,000-$30,000 on Law's water because we had issues out there. With the winters not as bad nowadays, but it helps. But also we have a backflush system at the water treatment plant when we did the clear well, that if there's any frazzled ice, we can pump water through the intake and then blow that frazzled ice off. So I'm not sure in past years. I don't think we've used water from Laws probably in 5 or 6 years. Maybe the only time we used it was when we put the new clear well online for that tie over that happened in the street outside the water treatment plant. I think that's probably the only time we used it. And I think that that was charged to the contract, that cost. So to answer your question, we haven't needed water from Laws in numerous years. So, I mean, if council wanted to take that out, then
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to just add before I turn it over to you, Mr. Charlebois, that connection system works both ways too. So if Sarnia, whatever got into trouble, we supply them with water as well. And if you remember years ago, I'm going back a bit, but we supplied, it was Moore Township or St. Clair, right at Christmas time, their lines broke down and we gave them all the water we could for like 3 days. And we really helped them out by doing that. But again, the intent was to help both municipalities, both Petrolia or Laws, if we ever had to do that. And there's a connection line in between, as you're aware of. That has to be cleaned and blown out before we give them water. But again, it works both ways. That's all I want to make clear. Mr. Charlebois, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I was just gonna add, with the implementation of the intake, and I don't know if it'll be in 25 or 26, but we'll probably have to feed off of Law's water for a little bit. To
25
while we are switching stuff for the new intake.
The other concern too, to add to all of this is, I really do not want the town to have to debenture for that water line unless we have to. And so if we can afford to pay our own way, that would be great. And we're looking really good right now with about 1.9 or $2 million. We need to raise 4 million. But anyway, I'm asking for direction from council. We do have a motion on the floor.
I have to get my iPad. So I thought you wanted
Sorry.
to see, if you give Mr. Charlebois just a minute, he'll be able to look at those blue water power supplied rates.
I won't look.
Oh, I don't care. It's all good. So we just give 2 quick seconds. There's 4 Blue Water Power has it on their website. So Rick will be able to access that very quickly.
So Sarnia it's $30 now.
Okay.
Oh, that's us.
Charges 38.
138 per quarter. Good at math. 40 some dollars a month.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow, okay.
And Edward. Charge. But they had a fixed. I don't see a fixed portion.
Yeah.
So Warwick is $46 per month.
Yeah.
Good mathing.
Yeah, so we are low. I remember when we looked at it 4 or 5 years ago to bring something in, we were definitely the lowest fixed, but the higher variable.
And I can
And that is the plan.
Yeah,
try and
so
do that.
understanding that we're low on the fix, but is the step change now the right time to make the step change? That's the question, right? So for me, I can agree with the $15 for the fix. I think that makes a lot of sense because capital and fixed costs for water is big. But do we need to also add the variable increase at the same time? It's roughly 38K in terms of variable. Is there 38K in savings that we can find through the water department budget to offset the need to increase the variable rate?
Well, we're certainly open for any amendments. Councillor Welsh.
So the overall effect is almost the same, except for we won't have to debenture, hopefully, and we won't have interest. Somehow we have to pay for this. So it's either we increase these fees now, or we end up with a loan we're gonna have to pay back with an interest rate, more or less. Is that not the options?
Or we try to reduce
Yeah.
expenses.
All right, I'll just, one more time, and then I think I'll call the vote. Any other discussion regarding, and I know we've been kind of all over, I will have the clerk read the motion one more time. Any other questions or amendments or proposals?
So the motion right now is only.
Yeah, we have a motion on the floor.
Fixed cost,
The 2025 water rates.
2025 fixed water rates or all water rates?
It's in general water rate.
Water
Yeah.
rates.
Yeah, so that would be with the schedule that was presented.
I'll propose an amendment
Okay, which is,
that we agree to the fixed rate increase to $15 per cubic meter, but
just, sorry, speak up. please.
so we agree to the fixed rate increase to $15 per cubic meter, but we revise the variable rate increase to 0.
Okay, I'll need a seconder to put that on the floor. That's an amendment to the main motion. Any, you have
I
a
didn't
second?
quite catch what you're amending it, the fixed rate to $15.
This fixed rate will stay at $15.
And the variable?
The variable rate will change from a 2.5% increase to a 0% increase.
Oh, I have a question.
Councillor Clark. Are you, we need to get a seconder on this amendment for discussion first. So I need a seconder. If there's no seconder, then that's lost. We'll go back to the main motion.
The seconder, just for clarification, is for discussion.
Okay,
Then I'll second it for
all right.
discussion.
Councillor Patel seconded. All right. I'll open it up. We're discussing the amendment only. Councillor Clark.
Through you to Mr. Shadowbrook, can you tell us what that difference is gonna make revenue wise in that, by losing that 2.5%?
Take your time.
Figure that out. You guys want to move to something else?
No. I can just-
Well, that gives me a second to put the amendment together.
Ned, can you please take 2.5% of our revenue for the municipality? Our variable part?
Variable part.
Or-
Like there's, I
figured
think
it out.
they're forecasting a little bit of growth in there, right? Because the
Yeah.
delta is roughly
Yeah.
38K, but there's either growth or
Oh,
other
38K.
changes. so
Yeah,
not
that sounds about
specific.
right. About 38K, yeah. So it'd be about 38,000
right,
lost
just-
in variable revenue for water by moving it to 0.
Okay, I'll just ask Annette, do you have anything to add to that?
Did you want me to calculate that for 25?
Yeah.
Just approximate too.
28,000.
28,000? So we're looking at a $28,000 reduction there.
And since
Okay,
she's really,
Deputy Mayor Field?
so since she's really fast on that. So the changing the variable or the fixed rate, do you know what that number is against last year's?
Oh, it's much more than that.
Is it like 160 or something?
I think it's over, I think it's over 200,000.
Okay,
Okay.
So so I understand, Councillor Height, so it's keep the $15 fixed and keep the variable rate at 0, don't change, don't increase it.
Yeah, the variable rate would
Yeah.
stay the same.
That was our strategy 6 to 8 years ago, but I mean, it would be very controversial and it's very hard to try and project the revenue on the water.
Right.
But that is basically what we were looking at 6 to 8 years ago.
all right.
And we can see Annette
Now,
actually
keep
working
your-
her magic, so we can all see it on the side there as she
Yeah.
drafts things.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you, Annette. All right. We're discussing just the amendment. Any other discussion regarding the amendment?
So that amendment as worded, just for approval from the mover and seconder, is that the council of the town of Petrolia amend the 2025 draft water rates to approve the fixed rate increase to $15 and that the variable rate be reduced from 2.5% to 0%.
Okay. Any other questions from council? If not, I'll call the vote. We are voting on the amendment only. All those in favor of approving that amendment? 1, 2, 3, 4. And that motion carries. Now we'll vote on the motion as amended. And do we need a mover and a seconder for that? Or
It still is Counselor Welsh and Counselor O'Hara.
okay, so now we're talking about the motion as amended. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the motion as amended? 1, 2, 3. Opposed? That motion carries. All right, now just before we go on to, I want to go back to that out-of-town rate. We've got two. I'm just wondering if council should consider the same rate, no matter where it is or who you are, out of the boundary of the town of Petrolia.
Is that in the fee schedule, your worship?
Yes, it was.
So that will be an item when we get to the fee
All right.
schedule discussion,
Thank you.
that will continue from there.
All right, we'll hold off on that. All right, so that'll move us now to the theater, the VPP. So I'll find my page here too, if you could. What page? 35, thank you. So if council will turn to 35. And again, we'll do the same as before. We'll go through it page by page, and if there's any issues, I'll ask Mr. Charlebois, Mrs. Pearson to stop and interject to add anything they'd like to add. We'll look first of all then, if you're ready, everyone.
So I apologize, your worship.
On
35. And I just was going by the agenda for the sewer rates. Was that something that we were going to address?
We'll jump back into the agenda. Sorry, Larissa has to head out to help with
We'll
the
just do
show.
her later.
Thank you. I was just unaware of the amendment. That's what I was just trying to, okay,
Yeah,
thank
we can
you.
do that.
Thanks, Mandy.
So is that, we've got, we're going to go through the marketing first. Is that the plan?
Whatever you wish, your worship.
She's got Annette has the VPP up first if you want to do that.
Revenue.
Oh, the VPP. Uh, 20 On, here we go.
They're different than mine.
Page 36, here's 36, got it?
35.
Oh, yeah, there's VPP.
Okay, good. Yeah, my page is, 36. Thank you. All right. So we're looking at the Victoria Playhouse Petrolia revenue. And again, I'll ask Mrs. Ellsworth too, if there's anything you would like to add to this or anything that's big changes maybe from the previous year. That's just briefly.
Thank you, Worship. The biggest changes you're probably going to notice is under the show budgets. Every year they're a little bit different, and that's mainly because of the size of the casting. So in position 1 last year, it was potentially a larger cast than what's projected for this year based on what we've announced for shows. And we're experiencing a bit of increase in some of our print costs, which is noted as well. Other than that, I would say there's nothing really too dramatic in there as far as
Okay.
most of that's on stage, but
Thank you, Mrs. Ellsworth. And right, I'm really pleased to see the $1.7 million there, the slight increase from the previous year. That's great news. All right, any questions from council regarding the revenue for myself, Mr. Charlebois, or Mrs. Ellsworth? Seeing none, we'll move on to the expenses for Victoria Playhouse. We'll do the salaries and remuneration first. Any discussion or questions there? We'll move on to special events. Other expenses. Okay, we'll move on to the next page. Oh, sorry, that carries on to the next page. I guess just a question, the VPP service charges. We budgeted 60, we're at 70. Have they gone up or is it just, why is that, Mrs. Ellsworth?
so your worship, thank you. It's variable based on the number of ticket sales.
Ah,
Yes,
Okay.
it was a little bit of
Oh.
a hard number to nail down.
On credit cards.
okay, thank you.
That's a good thing.
Good when it's high, but we
Yeah.
don't like to pay it regardless.
I know. Thank you. Advertising and marketing. Performer and show costs. Counselor Patel.
Just a question. Ushers,
Yes.
Yes.
there's,
Mrs. Ellsworth, would you like, would you like to speak to that?
Yes, that is a result of the pay equity and comparability study for equitable payment for that team of individuals. Yes.
okay. Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
These are not volunteers. This,
Through your worship, no, we do actually pay a total of 4 front of house staff.
okay,
And in that, we then add 16 volunteers per show. So we pay 4 that covers anyone handling cash and the responsibility of taking care of first aid and that type of thing. And then we add 16 volunteers to that team.
okay, thank you. Building costs. Debenture payments, we can't do much with that. We'll go on to VPP rehearsal hall and workshop.
Yeah, and as council noticed, so the bottom line on page 39 is 0. For the last 8 years or so, that's at least the VPP self-funds, so it pays for itself, that's why it's there.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Charlebois. I think that's very important to be clear that we do not subsidize the theater, which is great. And I think that completes the Playhouse. Did we want to go to marketing now? Oh, sorry. Mrs.
Your worship,
Ellsworth.
there was just one last thing I was hoping to add. We are planning to launch a very sizable capital campaign in 2025. It's not reflected in this budget, but that intention is for us to start squirreling away the money that we need to do the work for the elevators and washrooms. So it's a separate issue. It goes in right into that reserve account. So just
Okay.
as a heads up. Also, I don't have the 2024 numbers, but right now I have the completed 2023 TREM model numbers, which are a tourism calculator. 2023, which is trailing about 6% behind what 2024's ticket sales are. We've actually brought over $8 million in total visitor spending to the region. That's Petrolia and Lambton. We've had a direct and indirect employment increase of 77 people through that tourism spending, whether it be in the retail or restaurant sector or right here locally. And the economic impact for the province based on the GDP this year was or in 2023 was just over $7 million.
Wow. That's, I call it the spin-off, that spin-off effect from what we get. That's great news, Mrs. Ellsworth. Thank you for that.
Your worship, I'm going to get Ms. Ellsworth's attention. Would you be comfortable with me speaking to the package that we arrived in the mail on Thursday? The letter that I received that.
Oh, yes, that would be fine. Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry, I was like-
So it not, we not reflected in this budget, and we don't have a final number. And we will have an announcement through Ms. Ellsworth when we can make all the details fully public. A ratepayer, I'm sorry, not a ratepayer, a visitor of our theater for many, many years. In fact, Larissa and I were kind of reminiscing about how, 22 years ago, we remember him being here, and very kind gentleman. Unfortunately passed away September 26th. He was very philanthropic. He did not have any children or any spouses. So he was philanthropic across many arts, and we are set to receive 4 shares of $1.2 million once everything has been established. So I was in contact with the estate. Everything is moving forward. I've executed everything for us to be able to receive that. Obviously, that is after disbursements. So the $1.2 million is the value of the estate. But we don't know exactly what our 4 shares will be until that is finalized. But we will be receiving that in 2025. And at that time, we will definitely recognize that very generous contribution to the theater.
Wow. Thank you, Mrs. Pearson and Mrs. Ellsworth. That's great news. And again, that money would go towards the elevator and the washrooms in this building.
That would be our intent, your worship, yes.
Oh, that's
That way
great
the
news.
name exists permanently as part of our space and we can celebrate this person that celebrated with us for so long.
Thank you. And I want to just add to what you mentioned about the project for next year we're looking at with the elevator and the washrooms. I think that's very important that we promote that to the community to work towards fundraising for that project. Great. Thank you. That's great news. I like news like that. All right. So shall we?
Keyboard pedal, if I'm being honest, it arrived in the mail. I thought, oh, but yeah, that's much better than a keyboard pedal.
That's great news. Okay, we'll move
32, I think.
to marketing. We can. Page 32. We can do the farmer's market maybe after that too, I guess, can we?
That's really,
Oh, okay. And we'll just do the marketing right now. Are we all set to go? We'll start off with the revenue. And again, I'll ask staff or Mr. Charlebois or Mrs. Ellsworth, please jump in if you have anything to add. Anything regarding the revenue for the marketing? Expenses, salaries and remuneration? Office and general expenses? Just maybe a question, again, the website, we've only spent 1,700. We're looking at 5,000. Are we going to get bills in the next month to bring that up closer to the 5,000?
Thank you, worship. Yes, I expect it to, but I also build in a little bit of website maintenance every year that hasn't been completed quite yet. And
Okay.
that includes what they call a dark site, which sounds a little on the dark side. But it is a IT backup of the website so that if something did happen technically to the organization, there's a mirror of the website that exists. So we are not without that communications tool. So that piece of maintenance hasn't happened quite yet.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other questions from council? If not, we'll move on to advertising, media, and the newsletter. Trade shows and travel. Just a comment there. I see, I would like council to consider our town crier who's been really good for years and years. And I know, as you know, he always prepares his cry depending on the organization he's crying to. I see he's only put in for $60. I would like town to consider just paying him the $1,500 flat out a year and not have him submit bills and different things. Just for your information. Councilman Charlebois.
yeah, just gonna say, Larissa, could you just explain how that works?
Yeah.
For town crier?
Through you, your worship. Yes. Terrific. Yeah. Right now we basically pay as invoices come in, and as you can tell, this year was a light year. However, it depends where the provincial championship is held, and it was right next door this year, but it has been in very far-reaching places. So that's when we do reach that $1,500 expense. Or if he's invited international, he has accepted in the past, paid most of his way, but we have paid his fee to join the event, which is usually around that $1,000 mark. So that's why you see 1,500 there. It seems to cover it most years. So it's usually a couple of years down and then 1 year right up near that $1,500 mark.
So that includes his expenses.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It covers his fees to belong to the guild. And if there's any mileage or if he is asked to bring a gift to a neighboring community, for example, if he went to anywhere else in Ontario, brought a gift from this council and this team, then he would expense that as well.
And he even makes his own gifts that he takes and sends out. I'm just wondering if it would be just simpler to give him $1,500 flat out and say, that's it for the year. Has he ever gone over? He's never.
Marginally, but not enough to even talk about, like maybe $10. Yeah, it's been pretty close to 1,500 in my tenure anyway.
I mean, I really appreciate what he does for this community, and I think it's a token fee. I'd like council to consider a motion just to pay him a flat 1,500 a year and let him go. And I think he'd be happy with that. And I also think Mr. Whiting does not submit a lot of the bills that he has, and he just doesn't. But I think he really promotes the town of Petrolia. And if you've seen other town criers, I know there's competitions like they had here, but even if you just see the norm, he is way above the norm. So, yes, Deputy Mayor Field.
So I'll make a motion that we give him a $1,500 stipends per
Okay,
year.
thank you. I'll need a seconder for that, seconded by Councillor Clark. Any discussion? I'll call the vote. If not, all those in favor of approving that? Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you for that. We'll move on to souvenirs.
One question.
Oh, yes, go ahead.
In the trade shows and travel, I don't know whether I believe that this is the appropriate spot. I would like to ask to consider $500 to the Senior Expo in Sarnia. That would not only provide the coverage of the booth space, but also some literature, maybe a more improved or a display that really reflects what we're trying to do and the ability to collect the information that we need to grow in that aspect so that we can at least take that part. I don't know whether that covers full of cost, but in the presentation that came to council last meeting, it certainly spoke to the insufficient funds for the booth and challenges with no literature. And I would like to see $500 allocated to that in the budget.
All right. Yeah, okay, thank you. So it's moved by Councillor Patel, seconded by Councillor Wells. I do want to mention this is also going to the county, who will also be considering funding to them as well. So I just want you to be aware of that. All right. Any discussion then regarding, I'd like to, sorry, Councillor Patel.
Thank you. So I am aware and on the understanding that the county was not, had not provided any funds. So I just want to make sure that our council provides those funds to make sure that our representation is there. And if the county has extra funds to do, then that would be great. But I think that this will be just a small token of what could be spent to actually get the information and help that we need.
Thank you. And you're right. There was no money this year, but I think the county is considering it for next year. Deputy Mayor Field.
Yeah, and speaking to Mr. Weber, from the seniors committee, I think that's why they're doing their traveling show to all the communities, and his anticipation was that it would be in your next budget that you're gonna have for the county, that they would do something. But for $500, I have no problem supporting it as well, because our portion of whatever their $10,000 budget for the county is going to be very small to start with. So.
Okay. Any other discussion from council?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mr. Charlebois.
Thank you, Your Worship. One of the challenges I heard about that the seniors event that they had in, I think it was in Point Edward, was transportation for seniors from Petrolia to and back. I don't know how much that would cost, but
Right.
you want to consider that.
Deputy Mayor Field. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
and I think those are the bigger things that they need to have through the county. They're gonna, and I don't even know if this is the right spot for the $500 to come out, but giving $500 to that seniors committee is fine, but I believe it is.
In general event.
Your worship,
Okay. Go ahead, Mrs. Pearson.
to speak to that, absolutely. We do have our grant section of our budget. This is for the marketing of the town, which obviously at that time there would be marketing provided, but that might be better suited, as I believe that the motion that has been constructed is that, and please correct me if it's not the intent, but that the council of the town of Petrolia approve an addition of $500 to, and that's where we'll insert the line, to be approved to be provided for use by the Petrolia Senior Advisory Committee representative for the Lambton Senior Expo. So we could, with the mover and seconder, move that forward to be heard at the time when we hear grant.
I agree with that. So the move and second are okay with that. We'll move that when we get to the donations and we'll discuss it then. All right, let's move on to souvenirs. think we started that. Merchant promotions and special events. Beautification and maintenance. And of course, loan payments we can't touch. That completes the marketing. Mr. Charlebois, where would you like to go next?
Yeah, could we also do community events, please? Page 29 in your books.
Okay. Community events, okay? Everyone have that, page 29? That's, all right, we'll start off with the community events with the revenue. Seeing nothing, I'll move on to expenses. And again, staff or Mrs. Ellsworth or Mr. Charlebois, if there's anything you'd like to jump in on.
Any major change for 25, Larissa, you want to comment on?
Thank you. We plan to do a couple of less commemorative events next year.
Yeah. Not celebrating our 151st year?
I mean, people have been requesting it, but I believe we might pass on that opportunity. No, nothing really a big change. I mean, structurally within the events, it's always something a little bit new every year, but no, as far as that expense goes, we're going to spend another year looking at the same budget we had for 24 to see and make sure that we're covering out all of those age groups as required.
Okay, thank
Okay,
you.
Yeah.
Capital.
okay, we'll go to capital.
Yeah, and that can we do, actually, the presentation is probably the simplest place.
Sorry, could you repeat yourself?
On the presentation, page 74. I think that's the first capital piece.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fees, are we under?
No, page, oh, no, in the presentation.
Yes, just get.
Oh,
I'm just
there you go.
62.
62 in our book.
Okay.
On screen.
Yeah, so there's just a couple. There's a new security alarm system for the rehearsal hall.
Oh, yeah.
Planetary.
I can speak to that if you want. Yes, we've identified the need for a security system for the rehearsal hall as our artists bring many of their own musical instruments in for rehearsal and they leave them overnight. And right now it is a locked facility and a safe facility, but I think that that little extra security is not a bad thing when we have that. And we take our large piano in there as well. There's also a few computers.
Yep.
What page are we on now?
Where it's
yeah,
on the screen.
on the screen.
It's on the screen, but I have notes on my book.
Yeah.
That's,
This one right here,
So,
Okay.
yeah, the security alarm system for the
here, if you give me your
the
book.
little building next door.
yeah.
And then
Let's see if I read it.
Jess?
Yeah, no, I'm getting there. I just have to go through to be able to share.
Can I say something while we're listening?
Your minute here.
Your worship.
Oh, sorry, Deputy Mayor Field.
Yeah, just while everybody's trying to figure out what page we're on. The one comment I had, I think a lot of the capital, we're talking about security cameras, security systems. I just maybe encourage that we possibly do an RFP or put everything together so we have systems that all work together, that read each other, that see each other. I know we have a Main Street security system. There's some upgrades that we're looking at there. I think it's mentioned in the community center. I think it could be mentioned in the library, behind the library, which actually looks at our market. And I mentioned the library because I know there is a way for funding for capital, but if we take a look at all our facilities and have security companies bid on that, I don't think we need the most elaborate system. I have a pretty good system. I can tell who the person is in my backyard right now. And, you know, it's a basic camera. So I think that we should maybe reach out and have somebody evaluate all our systems and all our buildings. Not to delay the process. We definitely need to get them in there. But I think in this building, we have 2 alarm systems with 2 different,
Not this building, but other facilities.
Okay.
That's correct. Yeah,
yeah. So, you know, we have one company monitoring and we
correct.
guys try to streamline it a little bit, so.
Right, okay, thank you.
Then on page 75, please. Or is that up already? Nope. Next page.
It'll,
Go.
yeah. You'll have to
On-
refer to their
It's on
pages.
this,
Oh,
it's on our screen.
okay,
65,
Um,
thank you.
yeah, I think that's the only
I
other,
don't have this, so I'm gonna look off of yours to be able to manage. There you go, 65.
it's for the Victoria, for this building, Victoria Hall, for the air handlers, 2 and 3, and the VPP paying a portion of that, cost. In the
okay.
green, that's what that is.
Thank you, Mr. Charlebois.
I think that was it for the capital, Versa, for.
The rest of it's more facilities
Yeah,
based, yes.
yeah.
So any questions from council regarding those capital items before you? Okay, thank you. Seeing none. Mr. Charlebois, where would you like to go next?
I think we're on to sewer now, item number 6.
Okay,
Sewer operating in capital.
we're going to. Okay, thank you, Mrs. Ellsworth.
Thank you also for moving things a little bit ahead. I appreciate that very much.
What,
Page 50.
Yeah, so on the slide deck, it's page 48.
Page 50 in our book.
50.
50 in the budget section.
thank you.
Yeah, it'd be that way a little further.
No, so in the actual, in the budget section, so we'll go to page 50 in the
number,
budget
yeah.
section.
The numbers.
Sure. Just hang tight so I can flip it here.
Okay,
There we go.
Thank you. All right.
Wait.
Who said it was easy?
Okay. So we actually doing page, page 50. We're going to do this.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah,
different.
this is the presentation.
Okay.
These are the numbers, the
All
detailed
right.
numbers. So for
All right.
the 2025 sewer budget, so
Okay.
revenue.
Why don't you review that,
Yeah.
Mr. Charlebois, and then we'll go through the
Yeah.
list page by
Sure.
page. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so revenue, so 1.9 million, that's a 3% rate increase. And then the operating cost, total of 1.7 million. It's broken down there. We'll be going through the detail here a little later. So we get a net operating surplus of 250,000. And then there's the capital, 170,000. Did you want to go through any of those capital items, Mike? Just
If anybody had any questions, I could
Yeah.
do my best to answer them, but pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
We've done a lot of capital work at the wastewater treatment plant. Well, obviously a new plant, but over the years at our pump stations and what have you. So Jacobs in conjunction with us work on this starting in probably June or July. We get their wish list and then we sit down with them. So yeah, if anybody had any questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Thompson. So I'll open it up for council. Again, the items that are listed before you.
Yep.
No questions? Okay, we'll move on.
Okay.
We'll go to the sewer department then. That's my page 50.
I was gonna see if I just do one more page.
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Charlebois.
And we'll be, okay, so the bottom line is a $82,000 transfer to the sewer reserve. We don't anticipate any loans in sewer. And our balance as of the end of last year, as we've seen it a little earlier, 133,000. So that'll put us over 200,000, still a little low for what we should have there in sewer as a reserve. But we're moving in the right direction.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Charlebois. Oh, no,
Sorry, I forgot the,
yep. Go
forgot the
ahead.
the pie charts. And we have pie charts for sewer.
Okay.
We can move through those.
Oh, that's a good.
First one, here's the sewer revenue. So it's all one color there because we don't have any fixed cost for our sewer rates right now. I say we looked at that in the past and we'll probably look at that going forward as well. And the next pie chart, please. Yeah, so that just breaks out the main expenditures. So again, here the wastewater treatment plant, it's a big cost. The cost of our contractors is in that number as well. And storm sewer and sanitary sewers, the other big one. maintaining all the pumping stations throughout the town. And I'm done, Your Worship. Now we can go into the detail if you want.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Charlebois. As we mentioned before, you will have copies of these pie charts ahead of time next year, so.
It just looks like a slice to me.
All right. Doing well. Hang on, everyone. All right, we'll go to the sewer department. That's page 50 in our books, and we're looking at the sewer revenue. I'll go through that. Any questions regarding that?
And Annette
Councillor
has
Hyatt.
put it up on our screens as well. So that is a live screen. So she's got it active.
Good, thank you. Councillor Hyatt.
What is special project revenue? Because it's pretty large income, so I'm just wondering what it is.
Excellent question.
Okay.
Let's go for it, Mike.
Mr. Thompson, would you like to speak to that?
The school in Enniskillen, Centennial had an issue with their lagoon and septic system. So they reached out to the town and they had to pump off the lagoon and also bring sewage throughout the school year to the manhole just by the wastewater treatment plant. So we charged them in the fee schedule, I think it's $15 a cubic meter. And then also any out of scope work that Jacobs charged the town, we then charged the contractor who was taking care of that. So I think there's still more to come there. I think another 20 or 30,000.
None
Thank you,
forecasted
Mr.
for-
Thompson.
None forecasted for 25.
No.
Not at this time.
Unfortunately, no.
Unfortunately not. Is that okay, Councillor Hyatt? Or is that, all right? Moving on to the expenses, storm sewer expenses. Again, Mr. Charlebois or Mr. Thompson, anything you'd like to add? No? Okay, we'll move on to sanitary sewers. Okay, we'll move on to page 52, wastewater treatment plant. Questions there? Councillor Hyatt.
Thank you. Just wonder the explanation for why the wastewater treatment plant pays property tax.
Mr. Charlebois,
Yeah.
go ahead.
It's the same across the whole province. I mean, I think it's to make sure the cost goes to where the cost needs to go. Like we pay, it's in the wastewater treatment plants in our municipality, so it gets charged for its property taxes. That building property gets the same services that everybody else gets. For example, our water treatment plant is in Sarnia at Brights Grove. So we pay Sarnia property taxes on the assessed value of our water treatment plant.
That one certainly makes sense because it's not on our property.
That's right.
This one is on our property,
Yeah.
so it just
Yeah.
seems like we're taking money from this pocket to put in this pocket when this pocket has more,
True, but we're supposed to keep
has
the
more
pocket.
challenge.
Yeah, we're supposed to keep the pockets separate.
And, yeah, it just seems we have more challenging in terms of building revenue for the sewer department than we do in terms of.
Yeah, but it's truer cost of what sewer really cost
Right.
us. And I think that, I wasn't here, but I think that happened in, after the Walkerton situation where because before it was all one big pocket. And they separated to water in a sewer pocket
Right.
and the rest stuff. I think that probably came in at that time.
So it's mandated that we have to charge
Yeah.
ourselves property taxes for the sewer plant.
We never complain about it.
You okay with that? Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
I was gonna say possibly to add, there are some properties that are exempt from taxation, but that is through
Oh.
legislation. So we are not a legislation,
Churches.
right?
Right, okay.
Yes.
We could
Okay.
put a
But
church
those
on there.
authorities are not.
Okay, all right. Let's move on now to the sewer capital. Any questions there? Okay, seeing none. Mr. Charlebois, where are we going to move next, please?
If we are
Oh.
done with sewer, there is a motion for that as well. So I'll just clarify, just
Great.
you are, yes, okay. So that motion with the presentation being concluded is that council approve as presented the 2025 sewer rates.
Now, are we going to talk about the out of town one? Do you want to do that separately? Remember I talked about there was the out of town being charged
That's in the
different.
fee
That
schedule,
was-
so that's
Okay.
another, that's a separate section for discussion as part of today's
Okay,
agenda.
thank you. So is everyone clear on that motion you're voting on?
And I just need a mover and seconder, sorry, your
Oh,
worship.
all right.
I had the motion, just no mover or seconder.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Field, seconded by Councillor Welsh. Any discussion from council regarding that motion now before you? Let's call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Now, where would we like to go, Mr. Charlebois?
So next, we're page my 52 on the presentation.
So your, through your worship to the CIO, are you beginning the general operating and capital cost presentation?
Correct.
So, we did move forward a motion that was in relation to the Scotiabank building, so it would be appropriate to deal with that motion.
Okay,
Do we want to wait till we get to facility? It's in the facilities part. We'll wait till we get to facilities and then the details there, or we can jump to it.
Whichever, we don't, whichever you prefer. Our motions aren't broken out by, it's as you go if you're changing a motion.
Probably better to
so-
wait till we get to
All
that
right.
part of facilities, and we've got
Okay.
the detail in there.
so we'll do that then.
Okay.
All right, so now where are we at now, Mr.
My
Charlebois?
page 53, please.
Is that your book?
On the
Or-
presentation.
Oh,
46 in our book.
Where you see there.
all
Okay,
right.
46.
Presentation.
I added those pie charts.
Mr. Charlebois, go ahead. Oh, just give us a few minutes to,
There we go.
uh,
Next slide, please, Jess.
We have 2 books next year.
Okay, so this here is the estimated impact for every 100,000 of residential assessment. Everybody knows impact determines the assessments, but the assessments have been frozen since 2020, which is really 2016 values. It takes the 4 years to implement the assessments. So there's been no change to our assessment values unless somebody put a pool in or took out a pool and changed it or built in, the main one would be build a new house on a vacant piece of property. So first, so it's Petrolia, that's our recommended, our 3%. The county hasn't done their budget yet for 2025. I think they're trying to go a little earlier, aren't they? Like
the
start-
next year, Mr. Charlebois, they're not, they hope to, we will get our budgets in February to be approved in March.
Okay, so for demonstration purposes, I assumed 4%. Last year's inflation was 3.9. Not sure where the county will end up. Education, the rates came in just before we put all this together, the final touches. So it's staying the same. The main reason that student population has been going down. So it's provided the province some flexibility there that they've passed on to municipalities and local ratepayers. Okay, so and then our proposed 2025, so you can see the 3%. So that'd be $30 on a 100,000. 4% for the county would be $20. So a total of 50,000 per 100,000, or an average of 3% with the assumptions I've made. And for the average price of a home for MPAC, it's 194,000. So who's good in math here? So that's just rough, almost 2 times the 100,000. So it'd be $100, or it's actually $97 would be the impact on a $194,000 home.
Okay.
Questions on
Yeah,
that?
just Councillor Welsh.
Do we have any idea when MPAC is going to start their real assessments in using
The
the
whole
real
process again?
assessments? Yes.
I called this one about 4 years ago when we were in the middle of COVID. I don't think they're gonna get into their normal process until after 2031, because by 2031, the province wants to build 1.5 million homes. So as we've experienced, municipalities used to live off the inflationary impact of new assessments, but now that there is none. The municipalities are now financially motivated strongly to have more growth, because that's the only way you're going to increase your tax base. You won't get any inflationary. So I think it won't be till 2032 or so. They're doing a big study right now. They started that about 2 years ago.
Thank you,
They're
Mr.
doing a
Charlebois.
study.
What's
And
that?
that's
Now
what
they
they've
started it
been
for
doing for
3
years.
years.
Oh,
They started to do a study, but it's been at least 2 years. But their logic is good. If I was there, I'd probably do the same thing. It's motivating municipalities in the right way. And we're all focused on more homes faster. And as everybody on council knows, we're just at the cusp of getting into a bunch of residential development.
Just on a different note with MPAC, I think I just received it yesterday, and I'm not sure if the municipality has received it or not, and that's in regards to assessment notices are being sent out to the taxpayers in Petrolia on their assessment now. So they'll be getting that in the mail. There was also a couple other interesting things that I'm sure when you get it, we can pass on to council that I thought was interesting, but it just came in yesterday, so I'll stop there. Any questions, any other questions for Mr. Charlebois regarding his report? Okay, if not, so we move on.
Next slide, please. I've used this slide a fair bit about, that's our first reaction whenever something breaks, is where's the duct tape. And a lot of council members didn't believe me that was true, but the next picture, which you've already seen, proves that it is true.
And I was there, Mr. Charlebois, as long with another 150 people that were at that event saw that as well.
Yeah, this is
This
is Marilyn Gifford. She's the lady that was chosen to on the Women of Excellence by the Sarnia Community Foundation. The mayor and I were there, and Julie was there, and she came to the mayor and I several times over the past 3-4 years for some guidance and some help with her thing for the hospitals, and it's been very successful. Our area's getting 5 more resident doctors, or soon to be doctors, to help with our doctor issue in the area. But she came up to me when I entered the building, and Jimmy had one shoe on. I said, do you know you're missing a shoe? And then he says, yeah, it broke. I can't get it fixed. And I said, here. So I asked one of the people there to get me tape, and we fixed her up. She said it worked really well. She was there because she had to also give a speech. So he was all embarrassed about standing up in front of everybody, giving a speech with only one shoe. But yeah, it worked well. Duct tape worked well.
She was very instrumental in fast tracking doctors
Yeah.
that were, maybe out of country
Yes.
to getting their license to practice in Ontario. So anyway, I'll stop there.
Yeah. And if anybody's got any foot apparel issues, give me a shout. I'd be glad to help.
Not just my color, my shoes.
There you go.
Okay.
Next slide, please. This is one of the other slides we put in, which shows the difference between budget 24 and budget 25, shows the percentage.
Now where are we?
yes, hang tight.
That slide, it's like the pie charts. It's not in your physical.
Oh,
That's
okay.
not this one here, Rick?
No, there's one more column added to.
All right,
Yes.
go ahead.
And it shows the percentage. So we'll add this in next year to the budget
Good.
as well. Yeah. Okay, and we're going to go through all the detail of this going forward. So bottom line here, so it's 0, VPP 0, and then the whole town, we're at 0 as well because we have to budget to 0. We can't budget to have a deficit.
Right.
And we'll go through all this detail throughout the presentation. And the next slide, please. So this slide here, I just tried to do a quick little summary of where the main, what are the main drivers for the increase from budget 24 to budget 25. First one, planning and development, up about 66,000. There's a lot of development going on, as council is fully aware. And we've had to regroup ourselves in terms of our workloads for a bunch of our key people that are doing development. General admin up 47,000, VPP, big building to maintain, insurance and training. The big cost drivers there. Facilities maintenance, the Scotiabank, and we'll talk about that when we get there. The protective services, the OPP, I've got a couple slides on that. Fire department, that went through the joint fire committee, and the fire chief will walk us through his budget there. Public Works, we're switching to the rolly bins. It's in process now. The arena, it's gone up close to 20,000. Arena uses a lot of electricity. We're actually looking at ways to try and reduce that. We've been working with a couple of different organizations, including Blue Water Power and AMO, to look at ways to try and reduce our energy consumption and hence our cost. Parks and Rec, splash pad. So next year, we're the water and again, the water, no wastewater for the splash pad, and the electricity too that it uses, is 27,000. The insurance, we're still awaiting for our premiums for 2025. We should get those within the next couple of weeks, 3 weeks. And insurance has gone up quite a bit. I have actually a slide on that. The last 5 years, 6 years. We can discuss that. And then our loan decrease. We're on the town general stuff. We had about just over 300,000. So now it's dropped by 160,000, which greatly helped reduce the negative impact of all these cost increases. So I got it down to the roughly 350,000 net increase to our cost for town general stuff. Any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Charlebois?
That's sort of a high level view of the main changes. Next slide, please. Okay, so revenue. So this is the non-department specific revenue, just over 9 million. So it's departments that don't have a direct revenue directed for that, like the VPP and the Public Works. Proposed tax rate increase 3%, 6.6 million for next year. And as the mayor said, 1% of that is $66,000. Government contributions, 140,000. That's stuff like the OPP. Their headquarters is in town, so they get charged or they pay towards our property taxes. Same with the hospitals, another example. The Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund, the OMPF, has gone up $92,000. That one went up from 2024 to 2025. Our other revenue, so 1.3 million. So the Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund formula-based grant, it went down $84,000, and I've got a slide on that, and it's like we'll take a look at. And it's now based on current replacement value. It's part of our asset management figures. And then the gas tax is 197,000. Tax arrears, we've estimated 50,000 there. Bank interest, the bank rates are decreasing. Some are projecting to be down to 2% next summer. Blue Water Power dividends and interest, $256,000, and then some minor miscellaneous revenues. Slide, please. This slide here just depicts the OSIF grant impacts for next year. As you can see, here's Petrolia in green there. So ours went down 12.5%, down that $83,000. And then next slide, please. That's this slide here. So in 2022, the province increased, doubled the OSIF, the total amount of money in there. As you can see from this graphic, 2021 to 2022. So we more than doubled. We almost tripled actually. And it's the reason why we're now going down is, and I've got another slide here. I'll try to explain this a little bit. Yeah, so it's gone down 10% and 15. 15 is the maximum that they'll change from one year to the other, both up and down, to try and smooth out the impact of a financial change to municipalities, because the province understands how much these grants impact are important to the municipalities. So it went down 12.5%. We met with people at the province that do the OSIF grant calculations. And can you switch to the next slide, please? Trying to lose anybody. But now- what's that? Oh, that one.
I think that's in our.
You don't have.
You don't have,
this
yeah.
slide.
Oh, you don't have this.
This slide, we just met with them maybe 2 weeks ago, the most. So in here, so municipality A, so that's how we all used to be, including us. That was probably about 8 years ago. So if you ask for our historical costs, which is what's used in our audited financial statements, it's what all the companies use. So it's based on the history of whatever you pay for an asset. So that's the historical cost. And if we were able to, and we didn't have that back then, if we were able to have a replacement cost, it would be much higher. Because especially if you have old assets, the older your assets, the bigger the gap to get to the replacement cost, which is one of the key reasons why not just the province, but everywhere and every business wants to get a better grip on replacement costs. You have an idea of what's coming down. Because if you talk about a wastewater treatment plant and it's on your books for 2 million, but yet now we know it's at least 22 million to build a new one, you're going to come up. It's going to really have a negative impact on all your planning and your funding strategy. So that's how we were. And as municipality A, there's still a lot of municipalities that are like that haven't spent a bunch of money updating their infrastructure and their assets. So now us, Petrolia, and some of the other municipalities, especially the bigger cities, they've moved to B. So the impact between the historical cost to the replacement cost isn't that much, because a lot of our historical costs, even though they are historical costs, they're much closer to current replacement value because we just replaced them. So the historical cost is basically the replacement cost. But there's still a lot of municipalities that are like municipality A. So when they switched 2 years ago to current replacement value, so all of a sudden those other municipalities that are still have low historical cost, that they caught up to us in terms of total values. So that's why we've been dropping. In other places, actually, if you look at that other slide where it showed like most of the municipalities in Lambton County, they got 15% increase, which is the maximum they can get. So their asset base, a lot of them aren't spending enough money on their asset base, but I didn't say that. Their council should be concerned. I live in one place like that they should spend a lot more money on their infrastructure. But hopefully that was clear.
Actually, that's very interesting. I will ask, does council have any questions for Mr. Charlebois? It almost seems like we're being penalized for doing good work and keeping our facilities up more than other municipalities. But anyway, that's good. If there's no other questions, Mr. Charlebois, let's move on then, please.
Okay. Yeah, I was just going to say, from the provincial point of view, which wants all our municipalities to have good infrastructure, it's the right thing to do. And we've benefited because we moved quickly to update a lot of our old assets. The other municipalities, they're getting more money now through OSIF. Hopefully they're spending it on updating their old infrastructure and throwing some of their own money in. Okay. Oh, and
No, go ahead.
okay. Now, the other thing I was going to mention was, I don't know if the mayor remembers this, but they about 3 years ago, 4 at the most, you and I were on with 3 other municipalities, met with the Minister of Infrastructure, Ontario Infrastructure.
I do remember well,
Yeah.
yes.
And because they picked out of the 444 municipalities, they picked 4 municipalities to talk to about how can the province change the way they allocate OSIF and help encourage municipalities to spend more attention and more money and resources on their aging infrastructure. So I don't think it was our fault.
No, it's good.
But it is the right thing to do.
Okay.
And yeah.
All
Okay.
right, thank you. All right.
Okay. And I'll just do these other last couple of lines here. So we got our gas tax revenue. So it's almost 200,000, and our OSIF formula based almost 600,000. So we take that off right away and put it into the reserves that they pay towards capital. And then we get a net revenue of 8.3 million. I was going to say, do we want to go through the financial detail of the revenue part now in the detailed spreadsheets, or?
Yeah, I think we could probably, yeah, why don't we
And then
do
we go
that?
through the expenditure side?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
Ask a question?
Yeah, certainly. Councillor Hyatt, go ahead.
The 2 reserves that we transfer, they always go into working capital, but we never transfer them into, say, like water or sewer specific.
They actually go into we have a gas tax reserve and a OSIF reserve. And because we can only spend those monies on certain things, like
They couldn't be
roads,
spent
water.
on, so they could be
wastewater.
spent in a water or they
They
could be
can be,
spent in.
yes. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
If we don't save enough money for the intake, that's probably what we'd recommend to council, that we take some money out of it.
Yeah, I was just curious as to whether or not they could be used for those.
Yeah, they can.
All right. Thank you. All right, now where are we moving on now, Mr.
Yeah.
Garabaugh?
Annette, can you call up the revenue, please? In general, let's go through the revenue part. There we go.
All right, where are we now?
Oh, so, oh, in your booklets.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Near the front end. Yeah, first slide, the first page. First page. And so first one, the tax levy, so 3%. Payments in lieu, explain that, the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund. Can we look at the other revenue, please, Annette? Anyone that sort of has more detail in it?
Are we into the,
Oh, probably the next page. Yeah, the second page. We're on the second page. So the first page, the 1, 2, fourth line down, called other revenue. So the second page has the detail of that other revenue.
I just want to see my notes here for a second.
Right. The expenses after we're done the revenue, because
Okay.
we'll go through each.
Just doing that
part.
here?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So on mine, it's page 2.
Yes, that's the other revenue. The
The
first
other-
one up is the OSIF, or Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund. So as we discussed, it went down significantly, 12.5%. And then the gas tax, which is now called the Canada Community Building Fund. It went up about 7,000. And that's a federal grant to us. And it's the actual gas you pay at the pumps. Part of that goes to the federal government, and the federal government pushes it down to municipalities to help with infrastructure.
Okay, so do you want me just to go through this? then?
Sure, yeah.
All right. Down on, I'm looking at interest earned and the main bank. I know the interest has dropped.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask, is that, it's gone from, we're at like 339 now, and we're only going to budget for 230? Is
Yeah.
it dropping that much?
That some analysts are saying it's going to be down to like 2.5%. Plus, there's the rate, plus also the amount of cash that we have in the bank.
I guess so. My question is, you feel that 230, I would have thought it would have been maybe a little higher than that, but you're
Wow.
okay with that 230?
Yeah, you could be right. But it'll be at the end of the year, and it'll float right down to the bottom line if it is higher than
Okay.
30. Yeah, we moved it from 200 to 230, even knowing that the interest rates have come down and our actual bank balance has come down a little bit.
But again, you're at, right now to the end of September, you're at almost $340,000.
Yeah, we're getting 5.25% we were getting until recently. Yeah,
And that's,
which
okay.
was high based on where
Okay.
it's been the last 10 years.
All right,
Yeah.
thank you. All right, is there any other, we'll go down now to, well, I guess I'll just do the whole page there. Is there anything on that rest of that page that council has any questions? Councillor Hyatt?
Can we invest any of the reserve money to try and earn more interest? As opposed to just relying on bank
Bank.
interest?
Yeah.
That's,
just a
is
question.
there are, go ahead, Mr. Shalabah.
You probably have the answer. I think.
Well, no, correct me
I
if
think
I'm
you're
wrong. I
right.
think at one time we were
Being
really
neighbor.
restricted on what you could do.
We
I
still
think
are.
the province has opened it up a little bit,
He's right.
but I think you can take,
little
we
bit,
can't
but-
take any risk on
Yeah.
any loss.
Otherwise, I bet you there'd be some municipalities that would go belly up.
Yeah.
They don't want that. It's
So-
like we can't budget for a deficit because that's heading us down. Even though the province and the federal government have huge deficits,
Yeah.
we can't budget.
But
for
you're already budgeting for a large loss in interest earned. So if you were to invest it
Lots.
at a higher interest rate, would it not be a revenue? Higher,
Oh, yeah, sorry. The other point I was going to mention is we belong to a purchasing group with the other municipalities in Lambton County, what's that,
Chatham
Essex?
Kent.
Chatham
So,
Kent and Essex.
correct.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow, that's good.
Yeah, and one of the deals that we have is we have a deal with CIBC across that whole area. And it's not just municipalities, it's universities, hospitals, a few other big public sector, mush, they call it. And we get a really good rate on our bank. And also if we ever needed to borrow short term, we get a good rate. And we get a good rate actually on our credit card fees and our debit cost.
Okay, if that,
If we could invest it, well, I could either be a hero or zero.
yeah, you can't really risk
It's
it.
really hard. They don't want us risking, which is probably another good idea.
So
Thank you.
I had to reference what CCLAG is in great detail. I do have what was provided to us as an understanding, if you'd like me to repeat it from CIBC, just for
Oh,
better
No, no,
understanding.
Go ahead,
Okay.
Mrs. Pearson, yeah.
So this is email that I received for another area, which was the special arrangements in place for CCLAG. Our intercompany interest outlined on the interest allocation report that we often get. So simply put, in addition to interest earned on your deposit balances, intercompany interest is calculated and paid to participants in a net surplus by participants in a net borrowing position on a pro rata or rata basis, which is what you're seeing under when we get our reports in. So that's what CCLAG, how it goes out and how it comes in.
That's a really, really good deal.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. Thank you, Mrs. Pearson. Okay,
Okay, so that's all the revenue side of our town general stuff. Now is it hard to switch to actually I'll be able to stay with the numbers. And then on your presentation part, your paper part, it's my slide 62, so it's probably about 56 or something.
Just guess.
did we not just do that one?
No, we're
Oh.
on the expenses.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah. 54. Perfect. You're 8 slides behind and we hit another pie chart. And you're not. Okay.
This is your fault.
So now we're into the expenditure part. And so the total expenditures for 2025. The draft budget is 6.8 million. And important to understand that these things are netted against any revenue that they take in. So page 54. Okay.
That's 54 in our book.
There you go.
Yeah, so first one up is the library. Can you turn to the library, please, Annette? And I don't know if you know this yet, Julie, but I had your name down in the library if you want to walk us through the library, because so the way the library works, the county pays for the staff, all the books and I guess the computers and stuff that are over there, because I've never seen a bill. And it's our building and we maintain the building.
And we can probably walk through it if there's any questions.
Yeah.
You can have Mrs. Bollock speak to it then if you like. So we're just looking at the library revenue. Is that,
Yeah, that's the first one up.
all right?
That's the Nichols. We get a Nichols grant of 10,000 US every year. It's part of his will. So that's the library revenue. Can you scoot down a bit, please, Annette?
Yeah, I want to just hold that for a second. I'm in a different page here.
Oh,
Page 3.
page 3. Okay.
What page?
2. Now we're on page 3. Yep. Yeah, that book. This one. Right, it should be right here. Yep.
Got it.
Yep.
Okay. All right, let's move on to the library expenses. Any questions from council there? Okay,
Next is heritage.
okay. We'll do the revenue first. Any questions regarding the revenue before you? So by looking at the revenue, it looks like we're not getting a grant for the student. Is that,
Yeah, we're not applying for
Didn't
student.
apply for some.
okay? Okay,
Yeah.
all right, heritage
Expenses.
expenses? The only question I have maybe is the special projects going from the
that's for the
1,500 to
sewer
45. Does anyone like to speak to that, or just Councillor Welsh?
The bulk of it is continuing on with the town as a museum. And M word. We have plans for some interpretive signage throughout town commemorating some special things. One perhaps being the White Rose Band, one being the Japanese internment camp.
Okay.
And numerous others. So it's all the work itself is done by the volunteers, and this is just to produce the signage.
Thank you. Any other questions from council regarding the heritage expenses? Okay, thank you for that. We'll move on to planning next.
Yeah.
Okay,
Planning.
planning and development. First one is the planning and the zoning fees. Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. Planning, development and zoning expenses. And I just, as council is going through this, I want to thank Mr. Charlebois. I met with him yesterday and he answered a lot of my questions already to clarify a lot of this for me. The only thing I have is I'm concerned about the planning, legal and engineering. We're looking at bringing in another 35, spending another 35,000, but we're only at 11 now. Are we expecting,
I can speak to that. Yeah,
did you speak to
certainly.
that, Mrs. Pearson?
So as we know, we are in a growth pattern with our community right now. So with that growth pattern and those plans of subdivision and those site plans that are those various rates of establishment, as they get closer to finalization, we will have that that legal expenses to be
Okay.
incurred. So they may come all at once. Some of that may be into 2026, but right now we need to plan for that to be 2025.
Thank you. Any other Councillor Hyatt?
I just had a question on the building inspection fees. Is that not a revenue? Like, are we not getting revenue for inspecting buildings as opposed to an expense?
Mrs. Pearson, go ahead.
So we do, and we don't. We have to pay the County of Lambton as our provider for inspections.
But they do pay fees for building. We receive that as a revenue.
Correct, yes.
Yeah. Okay, moving on to the Committee of Adjustment. Any questions regarding the Committee of Adjustment? Moving on to the cemetery. Looking at the cemetery revenue. And I'll ask Mrs. Pearson, is there anything you'd like to add or anything there that's?
Honestly, the same thing I say every year. I hate guesstimating at this number, but it's based on patterns and trends that we have over a 3-year period. So
And
it's truly variable. There's no predictor for what that revenue will be.
And on the interest, the first one up there, you're at 21,000. We budgeted 14. You're way over. We budgeted 16.5. Is that 21 going to be much higher, or should we be going higher than 16.5? If you're already at 21 now.
So again, that is a care maintenance fund. So that is a provincially regulated expense that we need to put in. So it's a variable based on the amount of sales that we have. So again, the estimations are based on unfortunate events in
Okay.
someone's life, but they do
Okay.
speak to each other.
Okay, thank you. And you've already increased it already, so that's fine. Anything from council? Councilor Will.
Do you include the revenue from the Hillsdale Cemetery tour in the general care and maintenance, or do you have a separate?
Mrs. Pearson?
I believe we have it in a separate because that's where we allocate it out of. I just don't know which number or which line to direct you to.
Go ahead.
I believe it would show here in the down below in the special, or no, it's in heritage, I think.
Yeah. Actually, what's the current arrangement for that?
Is it further down?
What, there was about
I-
$2,500. I don't have the numbers right in front of me.
It goes to heritage, but is there some of it going to our cemetery
That
as well?
money specifically goes to Hillsdale Cemetery Monument Restoration.
Maybe it goes right into the cemetery reserve, maybe.
It, yeah,
Mrs. Fran, would you speak to that, please, so we're all clear? Yeah.
it gets transferred into a separate reserve for monument restoration.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll go down to John's cemetery expenses. Any other questions? No, okay. Can we move on then to general administration?
Yep. Certainly. So for general administration, so that's like council expenses, admin staff, salaries, insurance, legal, travel, IT, Vic Hall, building costs. And the net cost is $1,360,000. And we can go through the detail. Next slide, please. Oh, we don't have slides up.
No.
Yes, you guys have,
For that, you had said to leave it on the numbers, but I can go. over there.
Or actually, because if we, how we will go through the, sure. Which that'd be great. So next slide.
Yeah, just one second. I just have to share the
Okay,
screen
yeah,
through Teams.
certainly. That, yep.
Worship, we are at 11:57.
Yeah. You know what?
Want to do this one?
Let's just do this one slide and then just before we start to go through it, then I think we'll break for lunch if that's. So let's just
Okay.
go through this, Mr. Shalaba.
Yep, so here's the council, should probably call it contributions, because we don't have to give donations. So those are the ones that came through, they're all here, and we added one. Where did I put my little note? For $500 for the
Seniors
senior
group.
advisory committee,
Right.
right?
And so I do have that here, and we actually refer to them as the grants, council grants.
Council grants.
Yeah, yeah. And so that motion is that council approve an addition of $500 to line 4010-0511 to be provided for use by the Petrolia Senior Advisory Committee representative for the Lambton Senior Expo. And that was moved by Councillor Patel and seconded by Councillor Welsh.
And that was approved. Yep.
No,
Did
Your
we not
Worship,
vote
that
on
was
that?
moved forward
All right.
to now.
All right. Are we all clear on that? Any discussion regarding that?
This is the whole amount, or is this just for the 500?
This is just for the 500 to add it into the council grants.
Councillor Hyatt.
Is there other stuff that they're working on right now? We're saying that they can only use it for the expo. Is there other projects that should
Bring on it or not? That's right.
Yeah.
$500 for the committee? As opposed
It's
to,
accessible to the committee.
well, it would say amend to remove the,
Okay, so that was the motion directed, so we could get an amendment to that if we wish.
Okay, are you going to amend that?
yeah, I'll amend it to remove that, the necessity to use it for the expo.
All right, I need a seconder for the amendment, seconded by Councillor Welsh. I'll open it up for discussion. Any discussion on the amendment only? Are we all clear on that? Okay, I'll call the vote. All those in favor of approving that amendment? Okay, then we also have the motion on that forward as amended. Any discussion regarding the motion as amended? I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion carries. Okay, thank you. While we're just looking at the donations, I just wanted to mention in the future, I think council should, as you're aware of, they're looking at starting a major construction on our hospital next spring. And I think we may want to consider thinking about doing something, maybe not next year, but the previous year, to put it towards the, remember there was $30 million on the hospital to redo the emergency department. We have to raise 3.2 million approximately. And I think we should consider making some contribution in the future towards that hospital. I say 30 million, but you got to remember there's engineering, there's overseeing costs, but the project is planned to start in the spring. Will take probably a couple of years, but I just think that's something we may want to consider donating to later on, and I'll stop there. Do we need a motion for this, for the donations here, Mrs. Pearson, or are we okay?
No, that comes as part of your overall.
Motion, okay,
Correct.
all right, so is there anything else? Okay, Counselor Welsh.
If that's coming as the overall, I'm obviously, I believe their request came late, maybe from the caregivers or Petrolia Ferals, but we have donated to them in the past. I believe they are providing a service that would cost us a lot of money to do ourselves. And I don't know what the ask was. But I would suggest if we did donate to them last year, we would have a big problem if they weren't doing things.
So through you, your worship, I did not receive an application from Petrolia Ferals to pass along to finance. I'm not sure if they submitted it directly to finance, but that was never in our conversations.
I will look, but I think I was CC'd on it, so I'll have to go check through my emails. But if we didn't, I would suggest that we do it anyway. We did contribute to them last year, I believe, and I can't remember the amount. I think it was a few $1,000s, but it went to offset veterinary fees or whatever for their trap neuter release program. And it does solve a considerable problem.
I have a concern for that, and I just want to say to council, in setting precedent, we have a deadline. We've allowed things to come in. I think if we start doing it later, it's awkward. I also think that I asked for a report last year to come to council for us to consider that, and I have still yet to receive a report
From them.
from them on the cats and what they've done.
Okay, I can give you a verbal on it. What about a verbal? I did ask for some details from them.
But I did ask for a report to come to council.
Okay, I can
Mr. Charlebois.
definitely.
Yep. Counselor Welch is going to suggest is they may want to come in the new year
Okay.
with the report as requested by council, just on what they've achieved.
Okay,
And you're right, they do a great service for the town with cats, and also ask for a financial contribution if they want.
And I think that's appropriate, Mr. Chalba. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So I guess my next question, that's going to be approved as part of the overall budget?
Correct.
later on?
Yes, that's a
All right.
budget line that was just broken out in detail for for council to see.
Thank you, Mrs. Pearson. So we're at the general administration. We will break here for lunch, and then we'll pick it up from here at 12:30. So there's a half hour. Take a break, and thank you. It's been a good morning. I think we've done very well, and we'll carry on at 12:30.